So we're back again. We've got the budget. Followed the autumn statement that wasn't the autumn statement that was the autumn statement, and we're back here again. We started all over again. But it wasn't quite the doomsday that everybody was predicting. But what did it say? Why did it say it? What do I do? What's the effect on me? That's what this video is all about for you. So stripping out all of the noise that you hear from the media that it's all going to be taxed, we're all going to pay more, it's all going to be terrible. Well, when you take income tax, the first thing to say is the rates of income tax, for most of us, have not changed. They've stayed exactly as they are, 20%, 40%, then 45%. If you are in that fortunate band of earning more than £125,000 a year, then yes, you're going to pay more because the threshold has fallen from 150 to 125,000. That's the only change in threshold though, until 2028. And yes, that is a long way away. And secondly, we might have had a new government by that point. The thresholds in relation to income tax are going to stay exactly the same. What that means is, as we've talked about before, inflation, wages go up because we need to have more money in which to cover inflation, all that stuff. As your wages go up, comparatively, you're going to pay more tax because the allowances are not keeping track with that increase in wages, increased inflation. So your wages go up, but your tax rate doesn't go up by as much. So unfortunately, you pay more tax. And that's what all the hype has been about. We're all going to pay more tax. It's not going to be fair. It's not about a tax rate. It's about a threshold that is frozen, not the tax rate. We pay tax as an employee. You pay tax, and that's PAYE. The other thing that you pay is national insurance. You will see that as another tax. But national insurance isn't classed as a tax. It's towards our healthcare in the UK. It's towards unemployment benefit, maternity pay, paternity pay, all that sort of stuff. And then with national insurance, again, the rates have all stayed exactly the same. They've not changed. All that's happened, again, is that the threshold has been frozen. And that threshold, again, has been frozen until, you've guessed it, 2028. A long time away. But again, what that means is, over a period of time, that means that the amount of national insurance that you're going to pay is going to be more. But again, it's not because of the rate change. It's because the threshold has frozen. Connected with national insurance is what happens with an employer. So an employer is in arguably a fortunate position, some employers may disagree, that they get an allowance every year to set against employers' national insurance. And that's gone up this year from 4,000 to 5,000. And that has been announced that change is going to remain the same for the next tax year. So the tax year to 2024. We will have to see what happens beyond that point. Other taxes. So let's first of all think about capital gains tax. So capital gains tax is on anything that you sell that is an asset. Think of it like a bit like a second home, stocks and shares, some pension stuff, things like that. So it's arguably things you can kick that you hurt that you sell. In relation to capital gains tax, me as a professional and other people within the industry have been saying capital gains tax is low. It's 10 and 20% unless you sell a property. And therefore, they're going to go for that rate. And they're going to increase that because it's a relatively easy win and doesn't affect everybody. It certainly doesn't affect it if you are on a lower wage. What they've done is they've effectively halved the allowance come the 6th of April 2023. So it's going to £6,000. And then come 2024, that's going to £3,000. Now that is a big change in terms of rate, and it has not massive consequences because the rate is still 10%, but the concern would be if they then in the future change that rate, then that would potentially start making capital gains tax quite expensive for everybody, not maybe as it's perceived at the moment, just on the rich because it's necessary, potentially a rich person's tax. So back to businesses for a minute. Corporation tax. As we all know, about 8 weeks ago, somebody stood up and went, we are going to change what we announced in March and we're going to keep corporation tax at 19% flat rate, move on. Obviously, that then got cancelled because we had the budget that wasn't the budget, was whatever we call it. And what's happened now is that it was confirmed in the autumn statement that corporation tax was going to change. It was going back to what was announced in March, whereby the rate would be 19% if your profits were up to £50,000. If your profits are then over £250,000, then the rate of tax would be 25%. And that bit in the middle between 50 and 25 was then going to be getting you to effectively a rate of 25% by the time you get to 250. So you're going to be paying more tax over £50,000 and you get to the maximum rate by £250,000. Now, that might not seem a big change, but most businesses that are companies would probably turn around and go, yeah, hold on a minute, that means I'm going to be paying more tax. My profit's more than £50,000. If I'm an owner-managed business, I've got a few staff, that might be a £100,000 profit, and you're going to be paying more corporation tax at that rate. That potentially starts drawing into whether or not you should be a limited company. Which brings us on to the other bit that changed in relation to probably owner-managed businesses, but to the wider community, and that's dividends. And dividends at the moment are £2,000 tax-free. That's what they are. It's not a massive number, but it's £2,000. The bad news in relation to that is come the 6th of April 2023, that's going to be £1,000. Come the 6th of April 24, that's £500. And in essence, the tax-free dividends that we have been used to are going more or less completely. So if you have an odd stock and share in Shell, ICI, something like that, then yes, that income is likely to be tax-free. But if you are an owner-managed business that trade as a limited company that have been used to getting £2,000 free, if we go back in time, it was more than that. But if you've been used to that, then that allowance is going and is reducing drastically to £500. If you couple that with the fact that the tax rate is now 8.75% on dividends, and you then add in the fact that company profits are going to be taxed more, it doesn't take too much of an argument to say, well, hold on a minute, why should I be a limited company then? Would I be better off going back to being a partnership or back to being a sole trader? And that brings a completely different argument. But more importantly, when you're now looking at going into one of those businesses and starting again, or starting self-employment or whatever for the first time, that decision around a company becomes very different to what it was 5 years ago, what it was 2 years ago. And I guess the final bit to finish up on in relation to the budget is the national minimum wage. And this comes back partly to employers, because as an employer, you have to pay the minimum wage. That's the rule. Well, from effectively the 6th of April 2023, that's going to become £10.41 an hour. That's up from £9.80, something like that, which it is at the moment. Well, that's another 60p on top per hour that you've got to pay your employees. Now, as an employee, I understand why that's important, because we've got inflation, we've got a cost of living crisis, we've got all those things. We all understand that wages need to go up because that's the way we need to cover those costs. But as an employer, yes, you've got to pay more, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you will be able to charge that additional cost on to your customers. And that could create a whole different set of circumstances and scenarios that you need to think about going into the future. So the budget autumn statement, well, we have to call it an autumn statement because it wasn't a budget, it was an autumn statement. So the autumn statement wasn't all doom and gloom, but it probably told us what we already knew. And what we already knew was it's not going to be great. But there are some things that will help people. Unfortunately, for the majority of us, it was what we knew was going to happen. We're going to have to pay more tax. And we're going to have to pay that more tax in the future, not now, but come April next year and come the April after. But we have to hope that gives us a better foundation to enable us to go forward. That's the whole point of this autumn statement. And to a certain extent, the markets have turned around and gone, yeah, happy with that, rather than the last one, which was a very definite, don't do that, why did you do it? If you found this video helpful, then why not check out our video on financial uncertainty?